So next up, we've got Anxiety Josh. Yeah, anxiety's fun, isn't it?
Thanks.
Yeah, so Josh used to introduce me down the pipe pot when I did my first gigs, and now I get to introduce him, so it's nice and lovely. Enjoy.
Hi everyone, my name's Josh. I'm a therapist who works with people with anxiety, and it's a really wholesome job. Really wholesome, like the music tonight, some beautiful music tonight, tributes to late siblings, that's so wonderful. Singing songs about love not found, and yeah, I love the siblings over there. Mia, I'm sorry I forgot your brother's name, but that was amazing. Really wholesome. That stops here. First poem is called "Why Poets Shouldn't Do Open Mics." I've not read this before. My partner said, don't read that out loud. And I wasn't going to do, but then I had a Guinness, so here we go. Hey babe, how was your day? If you're free, do you want to hang tonight? I've heard of a cool place in town called the Whiskey Jar, and heard Benjamin's open mic is all right. They've got beautiful musicians we could listen to who travel from far and wide, and a relaxing, beautiful decor where we could cuddle up inside. Okay, babe, that's pretty specific, and why are you talking in rhyme? Screw it, I'm in. It would be lovely for us to enjoy some couples time together in a romantic setting, listening to mellifluous acoustic notes. Let's go right now. I'll put on my shoes. You should go and grab your coat. Together they marveled hand in hand at all the musical delights. Jane and Tom having a much-deserved break. Tom even thought this could be the night that he finally gets down on one knee with a sparkle in his eyes, and Jane revels for eternity in the joy of such a romantic surprise. Then a poet got up. Never in your life would you experience such pretension with unnecessarily woven syntax and mixed prose intervention. The poet stares into space, tearing up over a story about a goat, a thickly veiled metaphor about mansplaining feminism or sailing his dad's boat. He then locks eyes with the hottest person in the room, and on this occasion it was Tom who began to immediately swoon. Even though he hated poetry, it's just an idiot talking rhyme, but those diamond blue eyes and that woolly turtleneck, damn, he was just fine. Tom did not propose that night because his head had truly been turned. He grew distant from Jane, who developed suspicions that were soon to be confirmed. Tom had his final warning from work when he extended his vacation to commit 22 waking hours a day to prolific masturbation. Over the poet that he saw a month ago and couldn't get out of his head, that incredible wit, indisputable charm he wished he could take to bed. Tom returned to the Whiskey Jar to ask where the poet could be found. A poet, said Peter behind the bar. We've never had one of them around. Perplexed and panicking, Tom ran around and asked others about that night. No one could remember. Some even denied the existence of such poetic and sexual night. Jane will remember, Tom exclaimed, and immediately took off for home. But what awaited him shook him to his core as he discovered Jane all alone. She was cooking up brown and slapping for veins, smoking meth as an aperitif. She looked at Tom and began to confess in the search for some relief. I'm in love with the poet, man, she confided with tears running down her face. It's okay, babe, I am too, Tom retorted, feeling disgraced. Together they shot up and went to Nirvana for weeks. This is where they'd stay. Tom lost his job. Jane developed gout, and their bodies began to fray. Under the strain of perpetual drug abuse and lack of basic nutrition, the only way the sexual desires for the poet to be kept under submission. Sorry, there's another page list. For that mythical poet they saw one night was buried firmly in their libido. But the drugs wore off, the desire intense, and the pangs began to show. Turtlenecks, sex orgies, and indecent exposure at every spoken word night in town. But years went by, they travelled to every pub, but the poet could not be found. Tom was sectioned and sent to a psychiatric unit where his hands were firmly bound. He had rubbed himself till his dick veins exploded, a compulsion that's renowned to affect victims of open mic nights and become blindsided by self-righteous poets. But Tom's case was so bad he was chained to the wall. He was a danger to himself and he knew it. Jane lived off Frosties and LSD in a quest to find the poet in her mind. But 6 months later she died of gout whilst frigging herself off in a dimension left behind. Tom was allowed to attend the funeral, but his hands firmly bound. As the eulogy was read, something happened that was extraordinarily profound. It was the poet. And that's why you should never have a poet at an open mic. Thank you. Very nervous about reading that. And I'll leave you with, this is the first one I ever wrote. I specialise in working with anxiety and anxiety disorders. If you're into kind of want to learn more about anxiety, something I'm really passionate about, my Instagram is AnxietyJosh, and I put loads of psychoeducation stuff on there about panic attack. There's none of that on the Instagram. But this is the first poem I ever wrote, and it was when I was having a panic attack. A real panic attack, not like, oh, I'm slightly worried about something and having a panic attack. No, it was bad. And I decided to channel my focus into writing my first ever poem because it's better than ruminating on your imminent demise. So here we go. You know this poem's old because the title is called Sardines with 4G, and there's 5G that exists now. So here we go. The train empties at Birmingham. Behold my insurmountable glee, for I am no longer squeezing with those sardines with 4G. We were helpless, perspiring sausage meat in a moist virgin carriage, guilty victims of a mass-arranged marriage. This was not worth an 80 quid return. We were huddled in this sweat chamber of pulsating flesh, average temperature peak Marrakesh. We squeeze together and embrace like brothers in arms, except my anxiety is spiking. I need my mum and some calms, especially as my heart rate soared with every push, pull and shunt. This isn't claustrophobia, just everyone's except it's not their fault, they're just trying to get by. But it doesn't excuse why this savoury goblin unwraps a pie and stuffs it into his face, pastry splayed everywhere. This train's not destined for Bristol, it's going to Neverwhere. Cheese, onion and sweat fill the air like lead. Dank armpits, inane conversation, Bluetooth headsets filled me with this misophonic dread. I'll never again call Birmingham a sight for sore eyes, and I invite you to try and imagine my elated surprise when the New Street sign lit up the end of my tunnel and the smelly, cheesy wankers began to funnel through the exits onto the platform like pork-flavoured toothpaste and congealing on the escalators as they slither with haste. On reflection, I think my anger was misplaced. It's not those people's fault, for it's the rail company's disgrace. Profit over service and poor scheduling awry was almost enough to make a grown man cry. The mafia look at UK Rail with profound awe, how they've managed to land such a wealthy score at the expense of hard-working people like you and I, and even that twat with the cheese and onion pie. Thank you.